Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session of the Lessons in Leadership series. This is the initiative that we recently started and we kicked off a few weeks ago, and some of you may have participated in that. With me and the partner in crimes are Sandhya Ranganathan and Asha Mokashi, two board members for Manage the Docs. That's the community that we have started, and that community is a sub community of Technical Writers of India Association, which or the online community which has been around for a while now, 20 plus years. So we just have started a community focused on leadership, managers, aspiring managers, leads who would want to learn things and topics around leadership. We will have three tracks as part of this initiative. One is for the aspiring managers or leads. The second one is for senior managers, directors, and third one is for people who want to move from a regular corporate job to starting their own business as a consultant or maybe as a full-time company. So, and there are different track leads for each of those. The entire information is posted in managethedocs.org website. Do visit that, have a look at the sessions, have a look at the curriculum that we are putting together for this whole initiative. I would let Sandhya and Asha to say a few words, and then we'll kick off the initiative.
Yes, hi folks. When I first spoke to Leanne and she suggested this track, I was very excited because I don't think we've had this topic dealt with in depth in our conferences earlier. So thank you very much, Leanne, and excited about that. And I'm also personally interested in this series and hoping to learn a lot. So thank you and all the best.
Yeah. Leanne will be the track lead for the entrepreneurship track. And thanks to her and Innovatia for sponsoring this track with regard to all the meetings that we have been hosting. Asha, I know you were saying something. Sorry, I cut you off.
I don't know. Sorry. No, I don't really want to take up any time. I know I'd like Leanne to start. So I'm leading the aspiring managers track. So any requests, feedback, anything that you'd like to share, please do. I'll post it on LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere, so you know where to find me. So over to you, Leanne.
Thanks, Asha, and thank you so much for posting everything everywhere. And I think we've had a really good team managing the communication. So we've gone all out, which is why we've been able to drive participation. So to all the volunteers who helped out, big thank you. Thanks so much. So with that, let's get started. I know you all can see, so I'm just going to flip to the next slide. I wanted to give you a few ground rules before we start. I'd like everyone to go on mute. There's quite a large number of people online, so it'd be very hard to manage if people are not on mute. So please go on mute. If you have a question, unmute yourself and ask it. If you want to ask the question in chat, we'll be happy to take it as well. I want to let you know that we are recording the session and we will share it, and hope you're okay with that. And at the end of the session, we're going to send out all the case material that we've used. Everything, all references will be sent to you, so you can have that with you and probably use it in the subsequent sessions. A quick reminder from Akash and Sandhya, if you would like a certificate, then we'd ask you to attend all 5 sessions in a track, and then fill up our feedback form as well. So based on that, that's the only way we'll be able to track attendance. Otherwise, it's pretty hard for us to keep track of who's attended what session. So if you can please do that, we'll appreciate it, and you'd get your certificate at the end of 5 sessions. So with that, I'm going to quickly start. Welcome everyone. So happy to have you all here. This series has been in the making, I think, for the last couple of months, with all the planning and thinking about what we're going to do and how we can make it as interesting as possible for you. And we also want to make sure that when you're investing your time, you get something back at the end of it, right? You get a learning that will help you in the future, maybe tomorrow, maybe even a couple of years from now when you decide the time is right for you to start your own business. So this session will also force you to introspect a lot. Is entrepreneurship for you? Is it something that you feel you want to do? Or is it sometimes just a nice buzzword? So you'll have to do a lot of introspection. We have only 5 hours for the whole course, but we're open to taking topics if you guys want something more at a later point. So we'll restart the series. But for these next 5 hours, over the next 5 months, there'll be a lot of introspection that you need to do, and really think about what it is for you. Is it for you? Is it something you want to do? And more importantly, would your network and your family support that? Right. So we'll talk you through a few concepts, but it'll be a lot of self-discovery and some work that you have to do on your own. So what are we going to cover today? Today we're going to talk about why you want to become an entrepreneur and how soon you want to get there. We'll talk about your business idea. We'll figure out and see if we can help you create a good business plan, at least give you some samples. We'll talk about, what is your unique selling proposition and how do you articulate it? Some people always have really good USPs, but articulation may not come out quite the way you plan. So we'll help you, and it's all about preparation, right? So we'll help you prepare for that. We'll help you understand the space that you're going to get into and what the competition is like. So who do you have to look out for? And then go a little bit into the money part. So what does breaking even mean for you? And if you have to start this business, when do you start? And if it's not going well, then when do you put the brakes on? So we'll talk about all of that. And then we'll help you understand what a measure of success for a successful entrepreneur looks like. So that's really the agenda. As I said, you'll be forced to introspect a lot. And we want you to understand the realities of getting into your own business and how you can achieve it, because anything is achievable. It just depends on how you want to get there. Okay. At the end of this session, so at the end of this 1 hour, you will be able to understand the initial steps around setting up your own business plan. Will help you understand what an elevator pitch looks like, how to evaluate yourself and the competition, and also how to measure your success. So if you get these 2 or 3 takeaways at the end of this session, I personally will be really happy. Okay. So this, I feel, really for me is one of the most important slides I want to talk about today, right? And if you have, a notepad or something at the side of you and a pen, I would encourage you to use it. So think about for a minute what your goal is, right? You have, what is it that you want to achieve? When you say you want to become an entrepreneur, what is it that you want to achieve, right? And what drives you to get there? Is it, money? Is it fame? Is it hunger to have something of your own? Do you have some expertise that you want to share that probably nobody else has, that kind of level of expertise? So what really is driving you and what is your goal? I would encourage you just probably to take half a minute, think about that. And maybe not today, but probably when you get the slides, I'd like you to actually fill this out, right? So write down what do you want? What is your goal? And what drives you to achieve your goal? And how soon do you want to get there? Because if you can put clarity around these 3 main questions, you'll be able to convert a dream into reality. Many of us start with dreams, right? We all have dreams, and different mornings we wake up with different dreams, thinking about what can we do next or what is it we want to do. But the risk that you need to take and the drive behind achieving that goal is what makes an entrepreneur. And not all of us have it in ourselves to get there. And some of us try and then come back to mainstream corporate and sometimes try again. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. There was this guy who used to work with me a while ago in Dell. He was a writer at the same time. I think I was a fledgling first line manager. And we had this meeting with one of our senior VPs. All of us were sitting there. It was a meeting exclusively for the content folks. And that really happens very rarely, as you probably know, because we don't get a lot of face time with, SVPs in a large organization only for content. It's mainly you're part of a big engineering group, and that's when you get to speak to people. But we had this opportunity, and the gentleman at the time asked everyone, what's your goal? What is it that you want to be? And most of us were fumbling around and, trying to articulate what we wanted to say. But there was this one guy who shot his hand into the air and he's like, I want to be an author. I'm a technical writer today, but I want to be an author, and that's my goal. And unfortunately, the person that we were speaking to didn't quite understand the drive that was actually coming behind this one person's goal. And he said, hey, you're a technical writer. You know, everybody who's a writer thinks they can be an author, but it's not that easy. There's a lot more that goes into it. And he literally shut the guy down and crushed his dream. But that person didn't give up. He went on, left the organization, went on to write his own book, and now he's got his own series on Amazon Prime. So it takes a lot of different people in the world. And when you have your goals and you have your dreams, there'll be people who encourage you and people who shut you down. And it takes that strength of will to be able to push aside the people who shut you down if your dream is strong enough and say, I want to convert this into a goal. I have drive behind it. This is why I want to do it. And here's how I want to get there. So I'm going to move on from this slide, but I want to leave you with a thought that at the end of the session, please make sure that you go back and you write down your goal. You articulate it in a way that makes you believe it. And when you share it with people, it should be believable too. And then understand what drives you and put a timeline in place. The world moves so quickly. We've lost a couple of years in the pandemic, not realizing that time has passed us by. So if you have a goal and you have a dream and you have something that drives you, put a timeline around it. Otherwise, it will just always remain a dream. Okay. I want to give you, take just another minute to talk about, why people become entrepreneurs. And I found this really, really nice podcast. I put the link out here. And it's about an hour long. So again, some more takeaway work for you to do at the end of the session. Go listen to it when you have the time. So there's this lady called Kate Loom from Australia. She was an aeronautical engineer and at a very young age got a chance to go work for the Williams team, the Williams F1 team. So from Australia, she moved to the UK and 3 years into her dream job, because when you're working with an F1 team, you have to maintain a minimal or rather a maximum weight goal, right? You can't be too heavy if you have to get into an F1 car. So she got anorexia. She had to quit her job, move back home. She thought her dreams were over. But when she went back to Australia, one of the first jobs she got was working in a coffee shop. And while she was working in the coffee shop, she realized that all across Melbourne and Sydney, she could not get a perfect croissant, the kind of croissant that she was used to eating when she traveled across Europe with the F1 team. So she said, maybe that's what I'll do because I'm anorexic. It'll help me heal as well. When I get to taste and eat different things and slowly get back into the game with eating and working. So I wanted to drive and build this perfect croissant. She didn't have any training, right? But she was an engineer, so she decided to reverse engineer it. And her story will be covered in this podcast. It's now a widely successful business in as much as the store's called Louis Croissants. And hey guys, can I ask folks who are not on mute to please go on mute if you don't mind? Thank you so much. So she's her store, which sells only croissants. Normally, if you go to a bakery, you'll see like 10 or 15 different varieties of stuff, but she decided to focus on only one and make it the best it could be. People line up in the morning at 4 a.m. to get that single croissant that they can eat because it's so perfect. So this is a story of adversity, of determination, of pushing for perfection, and of accepting help from different people, and of course, constant learning. So when you're an entrepreneur, you need to be able to do all of that. It's not always smooth sailing. It's a lot of adversity and then, picking yourself up and moving on. And there are many business stories like this out there. I picked this one because it was really inspiring, from an engineer, aeronautics engineer, to starting their own bakery business and using the same principles that she used with the F1 team and all of that engineering, putting it into making, that beautiful humble croissant. So do your own research. This is just a tip for you. Look at businesses that inspire you. They may be in the same line as what you want to start. They may not be. But often adjacent businesses give you as much inspiration and ideas than just looking at your own business. So take the time to do that. I will share this. I have this already in the slide deck, so I'll be able to give it to you at the end of the session. So if you have the time, if you have an hour to spend driving somewhere, listen to this podcast. It's fairly educational. Okay, let's move on. And guys, I can hear a lot of birds chirping, so I'm getting kind of distracted. If you really don't mind, please go on mute. Thank you so much. So let's talk about the entrepreneurial
Leanne,
journey. Yes.
do you want to sort of mute all and then start, unmute yourself and start? Because I don't think that people who are on, who are unmuted know about that probably.
Okay. I do enjoy birdsong at the best of times, but not really when I'm trying to talk. So. Okay, hopefully it should work unless they unmute themselves. All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about the entrepreneurial journey and what is it for everyone, right? So the first thing you need to, we've talked about your goal, we've talked about what drives you to the goal, and we've talked about a timeline around getting to the goal. We've talked about a few inspirational stories around becoming an entrepreneur, and I'd advise you to take a look at many different kinds of entrepreneurs before you take the plunge. But let's come to something a little more important right now, which is, what is your business idea, right? And when we look at it from a content space where we all play, there are a few standard things that all of us think we want to do and we're good at. So do we want to start consulting on our own? So for example, do I want to be an individual that offers up my services to different people who may need a writer or a graphic designer or a publisher, an XML expert, whatever it is? Do I want to do that? Or do I want to, start a firm, a small little firm where I can actually offer writing services? So I bring in like-minded people like myself and try to do that. Or do I want to, say, go big and get some investment and set up a full-fledged doc shop with, say, 50 to 100 people and do that? Or am I, in a tech space where I want to create my own authoring tool, for example? There are many different things that we as writers, as people within the doc industry, can come out and do, right? Because we have that expertise. Is that what you want to do? So the first thing you need to do is clarify what your business idea is. And in a 1-hour session, we can't really get into that. We could do probably a half-a-day workshop just on this slide and build what your business idea is. But for the sake of an example for you, I'm going to say, for example, if I had to start a business today, what would I want to do? I'd want to start a writer's cafe, kind of on the lines of, a WeWork, but only for writers. And I'll use this example through this presentation just to kind of tie ideas in and take you along the journey that you need to go to become an entrepreneur. Okay. So for example, if I set up a writer's cafe, it's kind of like WeWork. People like myself who are writers, program managers, graphic designers, production specialists, multimedia specialists, I would set up a space only for them. They could come in there, they could grab a seat, work for half a day. There would be people who would come in and I would be able to figure out how to bring projects in there so that people could bid. And if somebody won a big project and wanted to work out of that, then there would be enough people there so they could create their own team and get it going. Maybe we could rent out software by the hour. Maybe we could have coffee on the premises, food on the premises, etc., etc. So that could be probably a business idea. Now, what do I need to do next? That's my business idea. You must be having your own idea in your heads. So take the time to think about what that is and then what next. So everything starts with a great idea, but we have to move on from there, right? How do you make that idea work? How can you turn it into something that is viable and makes money for you? So what are the questions you need to ask yourself, right? To validate if it's a good business idea. So for me to validate my idea, I probably need to first look at my network and see, do I know enough people who will even come in and work with me? Do I know enough, people in, say, the graphic space, the multimedia space, the writer space, the PM space? Do I know somebody who's selling doc tools who could probably give me a discount so that I could set it up in my writer's cafe? will I actually make money? So how do I make money, right? So yeah, it's a good idea. It's more like a kind of collaborative workspace I want to set up. But for me, the end goal at the end of the day is to make a profit, right? So how do I make money? And then take a step back and try to understand strengths and weaknesses, right? So what are your strengths and play to them. Oftentimes we get stuck on an idea and then we list out all our weaknesses and say, yeah, I can't do this, I just don't know enough. But I would advise you to start from the other side, list out all your strengths and then list out all your weaknesses. And maybe there'll be people who can help you overcome those weaknesses. As in, you can partner with somebody else, they can help you, maybe your family will support you, whatever it is, right? And then take this idea, when you have crystallized your business idea, take that and test it with your network. It's really, really important to test an idea with a few people that you trust. And I'm emphasizing the word trust because sometimes we have a great idea, we talk to 20 people, we sit on it for a while. The 19th person has picked up that idea and run with it, right? They've set up shop and you're like kind of left in the dust. So test it with your network, but make sure it's a trusted network. Want to be cautious, be telling you to be cautious on that because it is really important. Okay. And make sure you actually don't do all of this in your head, which is why a business plan and everything is always written down. So create a slide or whatever it is where you have written down your business idea. And it keeps changing, right? Every time you think about, for example, when I first thought of the cafe, I thought, yeah, maybe I'll do it exactly like WeWorks. But as you keep thinking about it, then I thought, okay, maybe I can have a tie-up with software organizations who will rent out software by the hour. Maybe I'll have a tie-up with Starbucks who will have coffee brought in there. Or maybe I'll have a tie-up with a production company or a publishing company that if we're doing, print media, they'll be able to help us. So as you keep thinking about your idea, it keeps evolving. And every time you do that, validate if you're in the right direction. Once again, look at what your strengths are versus your weaknesses, and then test with your network. And always make sure you have a plan B and a plan C. So sometimes you have great ideas. Like just before the pandemic, I was thinking of doing something which involved a lot of really physical meeting with people. It was an experience journey that I wanted to give people. But when the pandemic came in, I had to drop it and go with a plan B or a plan C because in the environment we were in, the business idea didn't work. So not only do you test with your network, you constantly look at the environment and see if it's a good one. Or has it changed? Are you too much behind the curve or are you too far ahead? You can be in both places as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk about your business plan. And I've just picked this up. It's from 100startup.com. There are many different business plans out there. And some of them run pages and pages and pages. And if, for example, you want to go meet an investor, or even if you're going to ask your neighbor to invest, I don't know, $50,000 in your idea, they will always stall you by saying, hey, what's your business plan? Because they don't want their money to go down the drain if you haven't yourself thought out what you need to do, right? And business plans run into pages and pages, and probably I've seen business plans which are 30, 40, 50 pages long with lots of data. For the purpose of getting started, I would always recommend getting some clarity of thought on a single page plan, right? So first put all of your ideas into a single page plan, like the one I've shown here. You don't have to use this. There are many different better ones out there if you just search for it. But you need to have, an overview. First of all, in a business plan, create the overview as to what is it that you want to sell. Do you want to sell, just stock writing services? Articulate that in a way that makes people interested and they understand whether you're talking to a doc person or you're talking to a person who doesn't even know how content is created. They should understand what you want to sell. Then put in there who will buy it. So who your customer is going to be. Very, very important, right? Every time you're starting something, you need to have some customers in mind. You need to have at least a couple of people that you know for sure are going to pick up this idea and run with it. Okay. Then you put in about how your business idea will help people. So there's always got to be value in it, right? If you don't have value in it, People will not pay for it. If people do not pay for it, doesn't make any sense for you. You're not going to make money. So you should drop the idea and move on. And then ideas around how much you'll charge. So what do you want to charge for your service? For example, if I said in my writer's cafe, I will charge $1,000 for 16 hours of time for you to come in, use the cafe, use the Wi-Fi, meet the people there, maybe use a couple of the software tools I have in place, complete your writing project, publish it and move on, right? So I may have to have 4 or 5 or 10 different price options in place to suit the environment, to suit the kind of customers that I want to target. So you have to be able to articulate your customers with great clarity and then understand what you want to charge and then validate, are people really going to pay that much, right? And then the next slide, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about Blue Ocean strategy and help you understand that perspective as well. But you need to be able to understand if people are okay to pay what you think you deserve for the idea. And don't sell yourself short. If you believe in your skills and you know that whatever you're offering is something unique, you can charge for it. Many times I've seen people, especially in the content space, get into business and then try to, undercut people by probably a couple of hundreds or 1,000 just to make sure they close a deal, and then not be able to deliver quality or deliver quality but not make a profit because they've undercut themselves so badly that they're bleeding money. So when you're articulating what you want to charge, make sure you've taken everything into consideration. And how will you get paid? Next question, right? You have your bank account set up, you have all of the right paperwork in place. So you'll have to have a CA on board who will help you through all this. And we do have one session where we'll talk about budgets and money and how to manage money. I think it's the 3rd session we're going to offer. But for your initial business plan, you'll just have to have some idea. So if you have a CA, talk to them, help them, or rather help them understand your business idea, and then ask them, how do you get to a place where you're ready to set up, right? There's a lot of paperwork that has to be done as well. Figure out if there's any additional, avenues for you to resource money. So is it only on translation, for example, transactional based, like I talked about with my idea, or is there some additional thing I can offer where I can make more money? So basically the idea is when you create your business plan, you don't leave any money back on the table when you finalized it, right? So if there's any other way you have of making money with this venture, explore every opportunity and document it. Because especially if you're going to an investor, they will want to see maximum bang for their buck. So you'll have to be able to get there. Then hustling is the next thing we talk about in the business plan, which is really how will your customers learn about you? It's your marketing story, right? And we tech communicators are really good at delivering our content, but very few of us will have really funky web pages of our own, right? So we don't spend that time or effort marketing ourselves, marketing our idea very well. So make sure that now in today's digital world, you have a really good idea and you have a really good plan on how you're going to market your business. How are people going to hear about you? How are they going to come to you and ask you to do something for them? You have to have a plan in place for that, okay? And then reference. So is there somebody you can ask, hey, can you, I know person X is looking for something like I have to offer. Would you be able to give me an introduction? I think one of the many things that often goes untalked about for an entrepreneur is the skill of being, and I call it shameless, right? You have to be able to put aside your ego and ask people, hey, I've come knocking on your door twice already, but I really feel my product can solve your problem. Do you want to have another look at it? You have to be able to get referrals from your friends, from your network. And then if you get rejected a couple of times, it's okay. But if you still feel the business idea is right for somebody, then go sell it to them. So that is something that you need to put in place as well. How do you encourage referrals? Okay. I have the last slide that I'm going to talk about today talks about success, but for the purpose of this, you need to be able to articulate when you're going to someone, what's your measure of success? Is it number of customers? Is it your annual revenue? Is it your profit margin? So what is the metric that you want to target as, okay, my business was successful in year 1 because I could do X. my business will be successful in year 2 because I can do X plus whatever. And that can be different, right? Maybe the first year you only want to say, I'll consider myself successful if I get 20 customers. And the second year, you can say for year 2, I'll consider myself successful if I have 20 plus 5 customers and I break even on my costs. And maybe year 3, you can say, I'll be successful if I have 30 customers and I make a profit of 10% or something like that. So you need to be able to have that in place. And you should also have a plan B and a plan B for you to achieve it. And then, obstacles, challenges, what do you think can go wrong? Because trust me, everything doesn't always go right. You might have the most fantastic business plan, but day one, a lot of things can go wrong. So make sure that you have, thought about it prior to it happening. Do that SWOT analysis, put those threats in place, and then figure out how you're going to address it. Okay, if this happens, I'll do X. If that happens, I'll do Y. And when you go to investors, very often they will dwell on that. So make sure that you're fully prepared to talk about all the things that could go wrong and what your plan is to fix it. So an exercise for you at the end of the session is to take this template or any template of your choice and create a one-page draft plan. Okay, just doing a quick time check. We're good for time. So let's talk about your USP, right? So each person has to have their own unique selling proposition, right? So what is your USP in a doc space, in a tech writer space? Why are you unique? Why would people come to you to do business with you, right? You need to know that yourselves. So take the time, understand your marketplace, okay? When you get into a marketplace and try to sell something, sometimes it can be a crowded marketplace. The doc marketplace is fairly crowded. There are lots of companies offering similar services, but that's okay. You can always be unique, different, better, but you need to be able to understand what is your strength, what are you bringing to the table, and if your marketplace is crowded, what do you do to float to the top? Because you have to be, especially in the first couple of years, you have to come to the top quickly so that people know who you are and spend money with you. Okay, so you need to articulate why are you unique, what's so different about your business. And I'm just going to take 1 minute to talk about Blue Ocean Strategy. So Blue Ocean Strategy was really came into probably in the 2000s, early 2000s, when INSEAD actually published a paper on this and then a whole book. So it's nothing but a market for a product, creating a market for a product where there is very little competition. Okay, so can you do that for yourself? Can you create a market for your product which actually doesn't have too much competition around it? And how do you do that, right? One of the methodologies, or rather, there are actually 4 things you can do. It's called eliminate, reduce, raise, and create. Those are the 4, I would say, pretty much elements you can look at for Blue Ocean Strategy to make sure that your product is unique and you have very little competition. And I'll talk about Apple. When Apple first came out with the iPod, that was complete Blue Ocean Strategy, right? We had the Sony Discman and stuff out there, but when the iPod first came out, people could not comprehend that I could download, or not download rather, I could copy X number of songs from someplace, 50 songs, 200 songs, have it on this tiny little device that fitted in my pocket, which had a great battery life. And nobody had seen anything like it before, right? So that was complete Blue Ocean Strategy. So I'm going to give you maybe 2 more examples, because I know this is a new concept that many probably people have not seen yet. And I'll do a simple one with a remote control. So for example, if I take a remote control today, all of you have remote controls at your home, and all of them have about 50,000 buttons, of which we use probably 5, right? So if I had to go through the 4 stages of Blue Ocean Strategy, the first one is eliminate. So what features or factors on that remote control do I take for granted, right? Or do I not need? So there may be about 20 buttons I've never used, I've never seen. So, but as a user, I'm buying that universal remote and I'm paying for all of it, right? So if I'm a manufacturer, can I remove 20 of those buttons and make the product even 10% cheaper? That's the first thing you want to look at. How can you eliminate? If I do the same thing in a writer's cafe space, maybe my initial model was to say, when all of the writers come in, I'll sell them seats by the day. So for 8 hours, they pay X. But maybe I want to eliminate that totally and say no fixed seating at all. People can come and pay by the hour and use the cafe. Okay, so that could be how I want to eliminate something which people pay for, but may not be of use to them. Second one is reduce. In my remote control example, is there some functionality that I've done a test with, say, 20,000 users, and they have never, for example, used the 4 yellow buttons on the top, which I don't know what they do, but still, the users don't know they don't use it. So can I just take that out completely? In my writer's cafe, if I wanted to do the same thing, can I reduce any freebies that I've been giving them? It's, I have coffee, which is free. I have a Starbucks attached. Most people don't drink the free coffee because it doesn't taste that great, and they all go to Starbucks. So I realized, while I make 100 cups of coffee a day, maybe I sell, or rather, maybe people drink only 40 and 60 is wasted. So should I just reduce the coffee to only 50 cups a day for a few people who want it? Or maybe I do a custom serve of coffee to people who say, I would like to have a free cup, right? So that's something else you can do on the raise feature. So what are the top features that people want? And can we actually increase the value of those? That's what raise means in Blue Ocean strategy. For example, in my universal remote, I'm watching something on Netflix, I pause, I switch off my TV and I go. When I come back, I still have to navigate whether I want to go to Netflix or I want to go to Amazon Prime or whatever I want to use, and then navigate to my program. So if I want to raise a feature on my remote control, maybe I have a recall button, which just brings me exactly to the last scene that I was watching on one click, instead of navigating through. So is that something I want to do? In my writer's cafe, maybe to raise the level of what I'm providing, maybe I say, okay, I'll offer free training to people who come in here on a skill which many of them seem to lack, which may be marketing comp, right? So they come in, they use the cafe, they work, but I'm giving them this training for free. And that's how I'm increasing my stickiness with them, and they need to come to the cafe. The fourth one I want to talk about for Blue Ocean strategy is to create. So is there something that's never been offered before? Something wild and wacky out there that may increase your whole value proposition and your profits? What is that? Can you figure it out? And maybe in my writer's cafe, that could be, having an app where people can actually share writing tasks or multimedia tasks across the team, and different people pick it up over the app, so they don't even need to come into that cafe to get it done. And then, have a PM function in that as well, or something that increases value hugely. So to do that, you need to understand your customers, right? You need to understand what they're willing to pay for and what is their biggest problem, and then try to fix that. So once you're able to articulate your USP, you need to create an elevator pitch. And I want you to do that also at the end of the session. So 2 minutes on why, what's your USP? Why will people come to you? What are you offering that is so unique? So you meet someone and you just have 5 minutes with them. What will be the top things you tell them so that they say, hey, I want to buy something from this person. Their business idea is so interesting. So create your own elevator pitch. It takes a lot of practice. What we used to do when I was in college was they would make you sit in front of a mirror and, give out your spiel and then record it. And then you listen to the recording and you see how horrible it is, and, continuously work on it. So you can do that today on your phone. Go ahead, record yourself a couple of times, make those changes, so that if somebody wakes you up in the middle of the night and says, what's your USP? Your elevator pitch just pops out right there. Moving on to understanding the competition. So this for us is a big deal, right? So one is, we always get in thinking our USP is so unique, there's nobody else like us. But in today's world, every minute there are new business ideas coming up. The marketplace is crowded. So you have to keep checking out the competition, not just once and done, but probably every 3, 6, 9 months. Look around you, know what's happening in the marketplace. So you have to list your competitors. And then not just list your competitors, you need to find out more about them, right? So you decide what are the key things you want to find out from different competitors and do the same across. So what's their profit margin? Maybe you want to know that. What's their client list? Who's actually going to them? What's their cost model? How are things working? How are they making money? What's their measure of success? So if you look at, for example, a Wipro versus an Infosys versus a TCS today, there are remarkable differences, but only to people who understand that space and the competition. You ask a regular person, they're like, yeah, they're services-based organization, and they have good bench strength, and they offer services to companies like Cisco, HP, Dell, blah blah blah. It's standard, right? But if you do even one level under the covers, there's so much difference between Wipro, Infosys, and TCS. But only if you do that analysis will you find out. Okay, so do that. And if you find when you're doing your competitive analysis, which is actually, you can Google for samples of what a competitive analysis looks like, but you can just do it yourself in an Excel, right? You figure out what you want to measure and then put it in there, and then put in what are the 4 or 5 competitors you want to look at, and then actually study that and analyze it. You'll find that maybe top level, many players are the same, but there's a lot of differences that you can find out. And then you do the next thing, which is articulate why you are different. And if you're not different, then either you go figure out a way to make yourself different so that people come to you, or you say, I'm not so different than, for example, Wipro, but here's why I feel you should do something with me. So you should have some story. And if you don't have a story, you need to create a real one. So don't just make it up. Make sure that you have a real reason as to why you think you're unique. And then you'll float to the top. One more thing I want to talk about here is, can you look at adjacent businesses and get a piece of pie? So for example, if you're looking at a content writing business, and that's where you want to start, you want to look adjacent to, probably a marketing communications business and maybe a media house or some video creation or AR or VR. Those are all adjacent businesses. And we can, if you wanted to offer an array of services which included all of that instead of just tech writing, then maybe your business gets more lucrative. Maybe it doesn't, but only when you do your competitive analysis, you'll be able to figure that out. And so when I think about Amazon and Flipkart, right? Amazon came first, started off first here at least. It was a big giant coming in. Flipkart was pretty small at that point, but they imitated success. They looked at Amazon. They were not afraid of this big giant coming in there and taking over everything. And they imitated success. And today they are successful, right? They've had a bit of ups and downs and bumps, but they've learned from it. So don't feel if your marketplace is already crowded with a couple of giants that you cannot succeed, right? So for example, if I had to look at you as a small tech writing organization today, can you compete with a giant like Wipro or an Infosys, where they have a bench strength of probably 500 people sitting ready to do a job, where they have a training team that can train people and make sure they're ready to go? Probably you can't as a new entrepreneur, because you'll never make margins, right? If you have all of that in place. But you have something that's unique and different. You have your skill in as much as you understand what tech writing really is. You understand what multimedia really is. Maybe you understand the AR, VR space really well. You can bring that in. That's your niche skill. So you can imitate the success that probably an Infosys or a Wipro has in terms of their margins and how they make money, but doing it with your niche skill that only you can bring to the table. So understand the competition, but have the confidence that you can do it. Okay, so we talked about a lot of stuff, and now I want to talk about what breaking even means, right? So when you're creating your, though we do have a special session on finance, I want to talk about when you're making your business plan, what costs you need to put in there. So there are costs and there are hidden costs, and you need to understand what trips you up the most, right? And for me, it's always been the hidden costs that you suddenly wake up and say, oh my God, I didn't know I had to pay this. More so taxes, depreciation on things, fees that you have to pay to a consultant, which you thought you didn't have to pay, taxes on the fees you have to pay to the consultant that you don't think about. All of that trips you up and brings down your profit margins. Okay. So when I'm talking about the initial cost analysis that goes along with your business plan, there are a few examples of costs that you need to keep in mind, right? So rent, you have to pay rent, even if you're working from home, you need to consider the internet, the phone, the electricity, insurance on your stuff, your tax, the GST, your accountant costs, your CA costs, entertainment costs if you have to take someone out for a lunch or a coffee or whatever it is. So all of that comes into play. And then you balance that up against your sources of income. So how do you think you're going to be able to cover those costs? Do you have like a nest egg for year 1 and year 2, which will be your primary source of income because you may not get much out of your customers? So you'll have to draw up that cost analysis sheet and then say, here's the point where I break even. Is it year 1, year 2, whatever it is? You need to understand that. Your partners, if you have partners, need to understand that. Your family needs to understand that. Probably it's very different than working in a corporate job where you get LTA and all of that stuff to take yourself out on holidays. So there'll be some sacrifices you need to make. But if you do this initial planning well, at least you'll understand and have a clear picture of where you're going to spend your money and what it's going to be like. So think about break even and what it means to you. Don't forget your hidden costs. And when you're listing your sources of income, don't be optimistic. Trust me on that. Just list it as it is. And if you have to err a little bit on the side of caution, do that too. Okay. So we've talked about a lot of stuff. We talked a little bit about your network. We talked about your business plan. We talked about the competition, how to create your unique selling proposition, customer base, profit margins, sales strategy, etc. Right? And I threw a lot of terms at you, which is probably a lot more than you can digest in a 1 hour. But you need to understand all of this before you get started on whether you want to go ahead with your business or not. And I also want to caution you on when to say go, as in when do you continue on with your business plan, and when do you say, you know what, I've tried this for a year, enough is enough, let's stop now, and then reset and go back. Okay. So a few red flags you want to look for. 1, your margins. Are you making enough to stay afloat? And if not, do you have a plan B or a plan C? So sometimes people start off on their own. They want to do this themselves, a sole proprietor. Get started. Few months down the line, they understand either they don't have a complementary list of skills to see them through from start to finish, or they don't have enough money, right? It could be either or, it could be both. So you figure out with your partner or your sponsor or whoever you're going to, what your plan B is, what your plan C is, and when you reset. For example, if I think about a restaurant business now in the pandemic, I don't think it's worth it, right? If somebody comes to me and says, can you invest? I'll probably say no. But if somebody comes and says, hey, there's a cloud kitchen that maybe you can look at investing in, and the Swiggy's gonna exclusively partner with them and the delivery is gonna be X, I might go with it. If I think about my writer cafe idea and someone says, let's set up a virtual cafe where you can virtually download software and you have this virtual meeting board or notice board where you can post your jobs and people can come in, etc. And you can rent out a space somewhere else for you guys to meet once a month. I might go with that instead of investing in a physical office space right now, because that's how the world is looking today in the pandemic, right? So you always have to analyze and then decide what do you want to do. Somebody going to join you, and how long do you keep going without making money? Okay, so sometimes people have enough nest egg for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. Nobody can decide that for you but yourself. So if you have 60% of whatever on the slide kind of worked out, and 40% you don't know, you can still get started on your business and figure it out as you go. But just know that there will always be a point in your life where If you're an entrepreneur where you say, I'm pulling back on this business, it doesn't make sense for me. Or, oh my God, I'm doing so well. I want to, actually sell this off and start my next venture. So you figure out the sweet spot. It is for you. This is pretty much my last slide. So how do you measure success? And I've got a lot of this from Forbes. I've not really put anything of my own in this except for two things, which is what you measure, you manage. That for me is really important. If you constantly look at your metrics, so once you decide, and I've got 6 metrics for success here, your financial statement, your customer sat, your how many new customers, your how to stay current on the market, etc., etc. You have different ways of measuring success. You need to figure out what is your measure of success and constantly look at it, review it almost on a monthly basis. Because when you measure success, you manage it too, right? If you don't measure your stuff, suddenly you'll wake up at the end of the year when your CA asks you to provide all your bills and what's your invoices looking like, you'll have nothing. And then you'll realize, oh my God, I've been bleeding money all this time, or oh my God, I could have made more elsewhere. So put your metrics in place and measure and track to it on a regular basis. A quote which I've carried with me quite a few years down the line in my journey has been, in God we trust, all others bring data, right? So no matter who you're working with, how close you are to the person, always make sure that whatever they are delivering to you is backed up by data. It's not that you don't trust them, but you need, especially when you're running your own business, you need to see data. You need to see proof that the metrics are being measured the right way and that your idea of success is everybody else's, because very often that can get lost in translation. Okay, from this slide, really how you measure success, it gets back to your very first slide, which is what is your goal? Because when you put your goal in place, you then understand, what your goal is and how you want to measure it. And that's how you'll be able to track your success. If you are almost 70%, you've articulated your goal and you're 70% there with your measures of success at the end of 6 months or a year, I think you're fairly successful. So that's, I think, the most of what I wanted to share with you today. Rushed along a little bit, but we'll be happy to take questions now. I'm going to share this slide with you. You can have a look at it. There's a few reference materials I've listed that you can go look at. A one-page business plan. There's a startup book that's available if you'd like to look at it, pick it up. And the podcast I was talking about. So my key takeaways for you is only you'll know if you're ready for your leap, right? Do you want to stay where you are or do you want to do something else? Only you'll know that. You know that. And you need to be able to articulate your goal and your timeline with such clarity that you stop a layman on the street, they will be able to understand it. Your USP and your elevator pitch has to be perfected over time. It doesn't happen in a day. You probably have 20, 30, 100 iterations before it's where you want it to be. So you cannot give up. Keep working on it. Build your network every day, right? You never know who's going to be important to you, whom you can help or who can help you. So make sure your network is strong, know your competition, and for yourself, understand what a successful venture looks like. It's not what your neighbor says or Jeff Bezos says, right? It's what you say it is, because you define your own success. And that's the parting thought that I want to leave you with. Whether it's, you want to stay in your current role, you want to become an entrepreneur, take the leap, you want to do a little bit of consulting before you take that leap. It's entirely up to you because you measure success, nobody else. Thanks, guys. That's all for me. We have sessions on the first Friday of every month. 4 more sessions to go, and we'll be happy to take any questions and, add in any more sessions if you feel you need it. Thank you so much, and happy to answer any of your questions now.
Yeah, so I think before the people sign out, Geeta, I think, is going to share the feedback form. So Geeta, do you want to do that? Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So thank you, Leanne, for your wonderful session. I will be posting here in the chat a link to the feedback form. So it would be great if all of us can take a couple of minutes right now as part of the session to provide our feedback to Leanne's session on entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Geeta. So guys, please
My
take the time
pleasure.
to fill it out. We can only improve and get better in the subsequent sessions if you tell us what you didn't get out of this session and what you're really looking for in the next few sessions. So please do take a minute to fill it out.
Yeah, please remember to we plan to give out certificate to all those who attend the session as well as provide feedback. That's the way we are able to track people. So please take time and submit your feedback. That will really help us, like Leanne mentioned. And once again, thanks Leanne for the excellent session.
Thanks everyone. Have a good Friday. And I'm going to play some music for you while you fill up your forms.
Hey, Leanne, before you go, I have a small question.
Sure.
Wonderful session. As always, you're a great presenter too. So my question is, Leanne, even if I don't want to get into actually entrepreneurship, but can I have an entrepreneur mindset while still working in a corporate world?
Absolutely, Ritu, and that's a great question. So I think in especially in I wouldn't say especially, but whether it's a large corporate or a small corporate, you do have ownership over a lot of stuff that you work on. And I've seen so many innovations come up because people treat it like their own business. So, for example, and the simplest things earlier would be, how do I move everything to an app and save my company X amount of money? Initially, people would not even want to look at the fact that printed media is going away, right? That was something that came up and people ran with it and saved organizations a lot of money. So any new idea within an organization, if you believe in it and you can get a sponsor within the company to drive it, and if you can show that it's in line with organizational goals, you can be an entrepreneur right there. The trick is to look at the goals for the year that maybe your organization has and see how you can align it with one of them. So that will be your pitch. How do you align your idea with the organization's, whatever goals they have, 1 out of the 5, pick it, align it, and then start selling it and get some sponsorship, in as much as get someone to be your sponsor and in a senior capacity in the organization who will go to bat for you, because there will be difficult conversations, but absolutely you can be an entrepreneur wherever you are.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Leanne.
Thanks, Ritu. Okay, I'm going to switch off the video, but I'm going to leave the screen open for another 5 minutes while people fill up their forms. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Friday. Bye.